Everyone in the mansion fears two people: the Korean Mafia boss at the head of the table, and the woman sitting beside him, the fiancée rumored to make men disappear without raising her voice. So when a black curvy maid walks into the dining room, no one looks at her twice. She is just there to serve, to stay quiet, to survive. She notices everything: the late-night phone calls taken far from the cameras, the way the fiancé never changes clothes near mirrors, the thin wire hidden where no careless criminal would ever leave it. Still, she keeps her head. The maid places the tray on the table, looks the boss straight in the eye, and calmly says, "I'm better than this." The room goes silent. Everyone waits for her punishment. Everyone assumes she just made the worst mistake of her life. They don't realize something yet. She didn't just quit. She already finished what she came here to do. Before the story continues, let me say this. If any of these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. The mansion breathed money and menace in equal measure. Marble floors so polished they reflected the fear in people's eyes. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. And silence. The kind of silence that came from everyone being too terrified to speak above a whisper. Amara had been working here for 3 months. 3 months of keeping her eyes down, her voice soft, her presence forgettable. She was good at being invisible, had been practicing it her whole life. A black woman in a Korean Mafia household wasn't expected to be anything but background noise. The help, the furniture that occasionally moved. She preferred it that way. Growing up in Southside Chicago, Amara had learned early that invisibility was a survival skill. Her mother had worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving lunch at a diner, doing laundry for a dry cleaner on weekends. Amara had watched her become a ghost in her own life, fading into the background of other people's stories. She'd learned the art of it, how to move quietly, how to keep your face neutral, how to make people forget you were in the room 30 seconds after you left. But she'd also learned something her mother never had: how to use that invisibility as a weapon. Every morning at 5:47 a.m., she arrived through the service entrance. The timing was specific, calculated. 5:45 was too early. The night guards were still alert, paying attention. 5:50 was too late. The day shift would be arriving, and there'd be overlap, more eyes to navigate. But 5:47 a.m. was the sweet spot, the moment when the night guards were exhausted and thinking about going home, and the day shift hadn't yet clocked in. Amara never varied her time by more than 2 minutes. Gray uniform pressed crisp. She ironed it herself every night, taking care with the seams, the collar, making sure no wrinkle would catch someone's eye. Hair pulled back tight into a bun so severe it gave her headaches for the first month until her scalp adjusted. No jewelry except the small silver cross her grandmother had given her, worn inside her shirt where no one could see it. No makeup, no nail polish, nothing that would make anyone look twice. She'd tried makeup the first week, subtle. Just a bit of mascara, a touch of lip gloss. One of Min Jun's lieutenants had noticed, had looked at her, had kept looking at her. She'd gone home that night and scrubbed her face raw. Never made that mistake again. By 6:15, she'd have the boss's coffee ready. Exactly 3 sugars, a splash of cream, temperature between 160 and 165 degrees Fahrenheit. She'd bought a cooking thermometer with her first paycheck, tested it 20 times to make sure it was accurate. 1 degree off, and the last maid had been sent home with a broken wrist. They said it was an accident, said she'd slipped on the wet floor, fallen wrong. Amara had seen the security footage, had found it in the trash bin of the security office when she was emptying wastebaskets. The maid hadn't slipped. Min Jun had grabbed her arm when the coffee was too hot, twisted it until something cracked. Then he'd calmly called his personal doctor, had the woman treated, and fired her the same day with a non-disclosure agreement and enough money to keep her quiet. The footage had been deleted within an hour, but Amara had seen it, had memorized every detail. She kept the coffee temperature perfect. The household staff consisted of 12 people, but only 6 remained when she'd started. The others had disappeared, some fired, some simply gone, their rooms cleared overnight as if they'd never existed. There was Kim, the head of household staff, a woman in her 50s who'd worked for Min-jun's father before him. She moved like a woman walking on ice that might crack at any moment, spoke in whispers, flinched at sudden movements. There was Park, the head chef, who cooked elaborate meals that Min-jun barely touched. He had a scar across his left palm that he never talked about, but Amara had noticed it was exactly the width of a knife blade. There was Chen, the driver, who saw everything and said nothing. He'd been there the longest, 7 years. That alone told Amara he knew how to survive. There was young Ji-woo, only 19, who cleaned the guest rooms and cried silently in the supply closet when she thought no one was around. She wouldn't last much longer. She was too visible in her fear. There was Mikhail, the head of security, a Russian man built like a tank who coordinated the guards with military precision. He was fair, professional, and absolutely terrifying when he needed to be. And there was Amara, the new maid, the invisible one. Nobody asked questions. Questions got you noticed, and being noticed in this house was dangerous. But Amara noticed everything. She had a system, developed over years of cleaning other people's spaces. In her previous job at a hotel, she'd learned that people revealed themselves in what they left behind. A businessman's room told you about his marriage. Photographs faced down meant trouble at home. A woman's bathroom showed her insecurities, expensive creams hidden in the back of cabinets, diet pills tucked under the sink. This mansion was the same, just higher stakes. She noticed that the Korean Mafia boss Kang Min-jun took exactly 4 phone calls every morning between 7 and 7:30 a.m., always in the East Wing study, always with the door locked, always emerging with his jaw tighter than before. The first call came at 7:03 a.m., never later than 7:05. Min-jun's voice would be calm, respectful. That was his father. Amara had pieced it together from the way he said "yes sir" and "I understand" in Korean. The old man still pulled strings from his retirement villa in Jeju Island. The second call at 7:12 was business. Numbers, shipments, payments. Min-jun's voice was clipped, efficient, no emotion. The third call at 7:19 was the one that made his jaw tighten. His voice would drop low, frustrated. Someone wasn't following orders. Someone was questioning his authority. The fourth call, right at 7:28, was always the shortest. Just a few words exchanged. But Min-jun's hand would move to his gun after that call. Every time. Amara had started tracking these patterns in her second week. She'd bought a small notebook from the dollar store near the bus stop, nothing fancy that would attract attention. Every night she'd write down what she'd observed. Times, patterns, deviations from routine. She noticed that his fiancée, the woman everyone called the Ice Queen, never ate breakfast, never smiled, never spoke unless necessary. When she did speak, grown men flinched. Lee So-yeon was beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful. Sharp, cold, purposeful. She wore designer clothes like armor, Tom Ford suits in charcoal gray, Valentino dresses in black, Louboutin heels that clicked against marble like gunshots. She moved through the mansion like she owned not just the building but the air inside it. Her morning routine was ritualistic. 6:30 a.m., coffee, black, no sugar. She'd stand at the window in the breakfast room looking out at the gardens while the coffee cooled. Never drank it hot. Always waited exactly 4 minutes before taking the first sip. 7 a.m. she'd retreat to her private gym in the south wing. Amara had cleaned that room once when Se-yeon was away on business. The equipment was professional grade. Heavy bags, speed bags, weights that most men couldn't lift. The heavy bag had dents in it shaped like fists and feet. 8 a.m., shower. Se-yeon's bathroom was like a medical facility. Everything labeled, organized, sterile. Her skincare routine involved 14 products applied in specific order. Amara had memorized the sequence just by observing the way the bottles were arranged, the slight difference in their positions each day. 8:45 a.m., Se-yeon would emerge fully dressed, fully armored, ready to be the Ice Queen. Rumors said she'd killed 3 men herself. The stories varied. Some said she'd shot them, others said she'd used a knife, a few whispered about poison, but everyone agreed on the number, 3. Rumors said she was more dangerous than Min Jun, that the only reason they were engaged was because her family's connections were worth the risk of having her close. Rumors said she once made someone disappear just for looking at her wrong. A low-level enforcer who'd stared at her too long during a meeting, gone the next day. No body, no explanation. The staff believed every word. Amara wasn't so sure. She served them dinner every night at 8 p.m. sharp. The dining room was a theater of tension. 20-foot ceilings with crown molding that probably cost more than Amara's childhood home. A table that could seat 30 but only ever held 2. Walls lined with artwork that Amara recognized from her art history classes in community college. A Rothko, a Basquiat, what looked like an original Warhol. Min Jun at the head, Se-yeon to his right, and 12 feet of polished mahogany stretching between them and any sense of intimacy. She'd watch them from the corner where she stood, hands folded, breath shallow, becoming part of the furniture. They barely spoke to each other. Min Jun would eat methodically, checking his phone between bites. Se-yeon would push food around her plate, her eyes constantly scanning the room like she was calculating exit routes or counting bodies. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes, Amara would catch something else. A glance between them that lasted a second too long, the way Min Jun's hand would move toward Se-yeon's arm but stop short of touching her, the way Se-yeon's expression would soften fractionally when she thought no one was looking. There was history there, something beneath the ice and violence. More wine, Se-yeon would say without looking up. Amara would pour. Her hands never shook, even though everyone else's did around the Ice Queen. That's what made her different. That's what made her dangerous in a way they hadn't figured out yet. She wasn't afraid. Fear was a choice, her grandmother used to say. You could let it control you, or you could recognize it and choose to act anyway. Amara had made her choice years ago, the day she'd watched her mother break down crying in their kitchen after being fired for her 3rd job in a month for something that wasn't her fault. "I'm tired of being scared," her mother had sobbed. "I'm so tired." Amara had been 16. She'd held her mother and promised herself she'd never live that way, never let fear make her small. So when she stood in the dining room with a mafia boss and his killer fiancé, she felt the fear, the animal instinct that said, "Danger, run." But she didn't let it touch her face, didn't let it shake her hands. She just existed, watching, learning, waiting. The first crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. Amara was polishing the handrail on the grand staircase, a task that took 45 minutes and required her to move slowly up and down, giving her access to sounds from both the 1st and 2nd floors. She heard Se-yeon's voice first, coming from the 2nd floor hallway, sharp, urgent. "I don't care what they want. I told you I need more time." Amara's polishing slowed imperceptibly, her ears sharpened. "The timeline isn't negotiable," a man's voice responded. Unfamiliar, American accent, no regional markers. "You've had 6 months already. 6 months isn't enough to build the kind of case you want. If I rush this, he'll suspect. If he suspects, I'm dead, and you get nothing." Case? Amara's mind filed that away, even as her hand continued its circular motions on the brass rail. "The director wants results. The operation has cost—" "I know what it's cost," Se-yeon cut him off. "I'm living it, but if you push me, if you change the parameters now, everything falls apart." Silence. Amara counted the seconds. 11, 12, 13. "You have 8 weeks, the man said finally. "After that, we pull you out whether you're ready or not." "That's suicide." "That's an order." Footsteps. The man was leaving. Amara heard a door open and close, the fire exit at the end of the hallway. Se-yeon used that entrance sometimes when she didn't want to be seen coming and going. Amara continued polishing, her mind working. Operation, timeline, director, pull you out. Se-yeon wasn't who everyone thought she was. It started with the phone calls, but it became something more when Amara found the wire. She was making Se-yeon's bed on a Thursday morning, Hospital corners, no wrinkles, pillows arranged exactly 2.3 inches from the headboard, just the way Se-yeon liked them. Her hand brushed against something that didn't belong, a thin thread of black cable, no thicker than dental floss, tucked under the edge of the mattress, connected to something small and square hidden in the bed frame. Her first instinct was to pull her hand back and pretend she hadn't seen it. That was the smart move, the safe move, but her hand didn't move. A recording device, or a transmitter. She could see where the cable ran, tucked into the seam of the mattress, down the bed frame, disappearing into a hole drilled into the floor that was so small she'd never had noticed it if she was looking. Normal people didn't wire their own bedrooms. Normal people didn't need to record conversations in their own homes, unless they were recording someone else, or unless they were being monitored by someone else. Amara's hands continued smoothing the duvet as her mind raced through possibilities. If Se-yeon had placed this device herself, it meant she was surveilling the room, maybe to monitor who came in while she was gone, or to record conversations for some purpose. If someone else had placed it, then Se-yeon was being monitored, watched, every moment in her bedroom recorded. The question was, did Se-yeon know about it? Amara finished making the bed exactly as she always did. Didn't touch the wire, didn't investigate further. Left the room in perfect order. But that night, when she went back to her tiny room in the staff quarters, 8 feet by 10 feet, barely large enough for a twin bed and a dresser, she pulled out her notebook from its hiding spot under her mattress. She'd chosen the hiding spot carefully. Under the mattress was obvious, the first place anyone would look, but there was a rip in the fabric on the underside where the springs had torn through. She'd tucked the notebook into that tear, between the springs and the outer fabric, and wrote, Week 4, Thursday, Se-yeon, recording device under mattress, bed frame, black cable, approximately 1 millimeter diameter, runs into floor, professional installation. Then she flipped back through her previous entries, 43 of them now, patterns she'd been tracking since her first week. Week 1, Tuesday, Min-june, 4 phone calls, 7 to 7:30 a.m., pattern consistent. Week 1, Friday, Se-yeon left mansion 2:17 p.m., returned 6:43 p.m., no shopping bags, clothes unchanged. Week 2, Monday, guard rotation changes at 11:17 p.m., 6-minute gap in coverage, service entrance. Week 2, Wednesday, Min-june meeting with 3 men, Japanese accents, Yakuza, duration 2.5 hours. Week 3, Tuesday, overheard Se-yeon phone call, need more time, operation, director wants results. Each entry was dated, timed, detailed. Together, they painted a picture that none of the individual pieces could show. Amara wasn't just a maid. She'd never been just a maid. She'd taken this job deliberately, had researched Min-june's household for 3 months before applying, had learned everything she could about his organization, his routines, his vulnerabilities. Not because she was law enforcement, she wasn't. Not because she was working for a rival organization, she wasn't that either. But because 2 years ago, her cousin Marcus had disappeared. A good kid, 23 years old, studying computer science at Northwestern. He'd gotten mixed up with some people, needed money for tuition, took a job that seemed legitimate but wasn't. The last text Amara had received from him, I think I'm in over my head. These Korean guys aren't who they said they were. If something happens, he'd never finished the message. The police said he'd probably run off. Young black man, they said, probably mixed up in drugs or gangs. They barely investigated. But Amara had investigated, had traced the phone number Marcus had been texting, had followed the trail to a shipping company that turned out to be a front, had dug deeper until she found the name Kang Min-june. She'd spent a year learning everything about his operation, another 6 months positioning herself to get hired, 3 months inside, and she still didn't know what had happened to Marcus. But she was getting closer. The notebook wasn't just observations, it was evidence, it was insurance, it was ammunition, and now she had one more piece. Se-yeon was working some kind of operation against Min-jun. That could be useful. Min-jun's patterns were clockwork. Mafia bosses had to be. Unpredictability was weakness, and weakness got you killed. 6 a.m., coffee in the East Wing study. 7:30 a.m., gym in the basement. Weights, never cardio. 30 minutes exactly. He'd emerge sweating but never exhausted, like he was afraid to push himself to actual fatigue where he might be vulnerable. 9 a.m., first round of meetings with his lieutenants in the conference room on the second floor. 1 p.m., lunch, always alone, always in his office. He never ate with his men, never showed the vulnerability of appetite in front of them. 3 p.m., more meetings, sometimes in the house, sometimes he'd leave in his armored SUV with Chen driving and 4 guards in the follow car. 8 p.m., dinner with Se-yeon. 11 p.m., one final phone call from his bedroom. This call was different from the morning ones, quieter. His voice would soften. Sometimes I could hear him speaking in what sounded like terms of endearment in Korean, though she couldn't make out the words. Someone he cared about. Someone outside the organization. Amara had his schedule memorized, had everyone's schedule memorized. But Se-yeon's pattern was different, irregular. Strategic. Some days she'd be in the mansion all morning. Other days she'd disappear for hours with no explanation. The guards never questioned her. Min-jun never asked where she went. That was strange. In a house where everyone was watched, tracked, accounted for, where Amara herself had to sign in and out of the service entrance and submit to bag searches every evening, Se-yeon moved with complete freedom. Why? Amara started tracking her movements more carefully, not obviously, just mental notes, timestamps she'd write down later. Monday, left 2:17 p.m., returned 6:43 p.m., clothes unchanged, no shopping bags, 4 hours, 26 minutes unaccounted for. Wednesday, left 10:05 a.m., returned 1:52 p.m., different shoes, left in Jimmy Choo's, returned in Nike running shoes, hair wet, recently showered somewhere. Friday, left 11:30 p.m., unusual, returned 3:14 a.m., exhausted, bruise on left wrist, partially covered by a bracelet, walked differently, favoring right side. Sunday, didn't leave, spent entire day in room, no meals, refused all offers of food from the kitchen staff. Tuesday, left 6 a.m., extremely unusual, returned 9:45 a.m., changed clothes entirely, left in casual wear, returned in a business suit. The bruise was what made Amara pause. She'd seen Se-yeon the next morning, serving breakfast with the same practiced invisibility. The bruise was covered with makeup, but Amara knew what to look for. She'd worn enough concealer in her own life to recognize the shade of someone hiding damage. The slight yellow-green tint beneath the foundation meant it was a few days old. But here's what was strange. Min-jun hadn't given her that bruise. Amara would have known. She cleaned his office, his bedroom, his bathroom. She saw everything. She washed his clothes, noticed when his knuckles were bruised or cut. He was violent, yes, but in controlled ways, calculated ways. When he hurt someone, it was deliberate, targeted, and he'd usually have Chen dispose of any evidence. That bruise on Se-yeon was defensive. The kind you got blocking a blow or being grabbed during a struggle. The angle was wrong for an offensive strike. Se-yeon was fighting someone, just not Min-jun. Amara added the observation to her notebook, then spent an hour that night cross-referencing the dates of Se-yeon's absences with Min-jun's schedule. A pattern emerged. Every time Se-yeon left during the day, Min-jun had meetings scheduled with his lieutenants, big meetings, important ones, strategy sessions about shipments, payments, territory disputes. She was never there for those meetings. And yet, based on the phone call Amara had overheard, Se-yeon was building some kind of case against Min-jun, which meant she needed information from exactly the kind of meetings she was deliberately missing, unless she had another way to get that information. Amara thought about the wire in Se-yeon's bedroom, thought about how professional the installation had been. Then she thought about what her cousin Marcus had been studying before he disappeared, computer science, specifically network security and surveillance systems. If you wanted to monitor a house full of criminals, Amara thought, you wouldn't just bug one room, you'd bug everything. The next day, she started looking for cameras. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let me know where you're from. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button. It helps more people discover Love and Tension. She found the first camera on a Wednesday, hidden in the crown molding of the conference room where Min Jun held his strategy meetings. It was tiny, barely the size of a pencil eraser, matte black to blend with the dark wood. She wouldn't have noticed it at all, except she'd been standing on a ladder to dust the chandelier and happened to be at exactly the right angle. Once she knew what to look for, she found 11 more over the next week. One in Min Jun's office, disguised as a screw head in the bookshelf. One in the dining room, embedded in the decorative plasterwork. 2 in the living room, positioned to cover all angles. 1 in the main hallway. 3 in the guest bedrooms. 2 in the garage. 1 in the kitchen. The cameras covered almost every inch of the mansion. Professionally installed, probably years ago. Definitely before Se-yeon arrived. Min Jun was surveilling his own house, which made sense. A man in his position would want to know everything happening under his roof, would want evidence if someone betrayed him. But if Se-yeon knew about the cameras, and based on the blind spot she'd created in her bedroom, she clearly did, then she'd know she was being watched, would know that building a case against Min Jun meant accessing footage from cameras he controlled. Unless she had access to the surveillance system. Unless she'd somehow compromised it. Amara spent her lunch break that day in the security office, ostensibly to deliver Mikhail his meal. She'd been doing it for weeks now, establishing the pattern, making it routine until no one questioned her presence. While Mikhail ate, Amara emptied his trash can and wiped down his desk. Her eyes scanned the monitors. 12 screens showing different angles of the mansion and grounds. The system was sophisticated, professional grade, probably cost $250,000 to install. But there was a detail Amara noticed that most people wouldn't. The timestamps on the feeds didn't all match. Most were synchronized, running on the same clock. But 2 cameras, the one in the conference room and the one in Min Jun's office, had timestamps that were 3 seconds behind the others. 3 seconds. Barely noticeable, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Those feeds had been tampered with. Someone had access to the system and was creating a delay, probably to edit footage, remove segments, or copy files before they were stored on the main server. Amara knew with absolute certainty who that someone was. Se-yeon wasn't just building a case against Min Jun. She'd hacked his own surveillance system and was using it against him. Every meeting, every conversation, every illegal order, she had it all on video, and he had no idea. That took skill. That took resources. That took backing from an organization with serious technical capabilities. FBI, Amara thought. Has to be. That night she added to her notebook, Se-yeon, federal agent, almost certainly FBI, has compromised mansion surveillance system, access to all footage. Min Jun doesn't know. Estimated timeline to arrest, 4 to 8 weeks based on standard investigation procedures. And then, after a long pause, she added, Marcus, no connection to Se-yeon's operation found yet. Must be separate investigation or cold case. Keep searching. It happened on a Thursday. Amara was polishing silver in the dining room, a mindless task that let her listen to everything happening in the adjacent rooms. The walls in the mansion were thick, designed to contain sound, but the ventilation system was old, installed when the house was built in the 1920s. Large ducts ran through the walls, connecting rooms, carrying sound if you knew where to position yourself. Amara had mapped the entire ventilation system in her first month, had tested which vents carried sound from which rooms, had found the perfect spots to stand where she could hear multiple conversations at once. Min Jun and 2 of his lieutenants were in the study. The door was closed, but their voices carried through the air vent near the ceiling, the one disguised behind an ornate decorative grate. Don't trust her, one lieutenant was saying. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. This was Kim Tae-sung, Min Jun's second in command, former military, expert marksman, suspected of at least a dozen kills. He'd never liked Se-yeon. She's been too quiet, too compliant. She knows what happens if she steps out of line. That was Min Jun. cold and certain. His voice had the particular flatness it got when he was suppressing emotion. "Does she? Because last week she canceled 3 of your meetings without explanation. 3! And Tuesday she was gone for 6 hours. 6 hours, and nobody knows where." Amara's hands continued their circular motions on the silver platter, her ears straining. "Seyard has her own operations," Min-jun said, finally. "I don't control every aspect of her life. You should," the second lieutenant spoke up now. This was Park Jin-ho, younger than Tae-sung, but just as deadly. He ran the gambling operations and had a reputation for creative violence. "She's a liability. The Yakuza are already asking questions about her. The triads want to know who she's connected to, and she won't tell us anything. She doesn't have to. She's my fiancée, not my employee. That's exactly the problem." Tae-sung's voice rose slightly. "You're thinking with your dick instead of your head. She shows up out of nowhere 2 years ago with connections we can't verify. Her family history doesn't check out. I had someone look into it. The Lee family in Busan she claims to be from, they've never heard of her." Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Amara's pulse quickened, but her hands remained steady on the silver. "Are you questioning my judgment?" Min-jun's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "I'm questioning your blind spot," Tae-sung said. "And I'm not the only one. The men are talking. They think she's a plant. Police, feds, maybe even Yakuza trying to infiltrate us. The men can think whatever they want. Seyon stays. Even if she's the reason we lost the shipment last month, even if she's feeding information to our enemies." Another slam. Definitely a fist on a desk this time. "We lost that shipment because someone in your crew talked to their girlfriend after too many drinks," Min-jun said. "I had Chen deal with both of them. Don't deflect blame onto Seyon because you can't keep your own people in line." "That's convenient," Jin-ho said quietly. "The moment we start questioning her, suddenly it's everyone else's fault." "Get out!" Min-jun's voice was archaic. "Both of you, and if I hear one more word about Seyon from either of you, we'll have a very different conversation." Footsteps, the sound of a door opening and closing. Then, silence. Amara finished polishing the platter and moved to the next piece of silver. Her mind was cataloging everything she'd heard. They suspected Seyon. They didn't trust her. But Min-jun was protecting her anyway. Why? The obvious answer was love, or whatever passed for it in a world like this, but Amara didn't think Min-jun was capable of that kind of vulnerability. He was too careful, too controlled, unless Seyon had something on him, unless their engagement was transactional, protection for her, something valuable for him. What could an undercover federal agent possibly offer a mafia boss that would make him defend her against his own men? The answer came 3 days later. Amara was changing the sheets in Seyon's bedroom when she noticed it. The full-length mirror in the corner, an ornate piece with a gilded frame that probably cost more than Amara would earn in 5 years, was positioned strangely, not against the wall like normal mirrors, but angled away from the bed, away from the closet, away from the bathroom door, away from anywhere Seyon would naturally need to see herself. Amara paused in her sheet changing, looking at her own reflection in the glass. Then she walked closer, examining the frame. No cameras visible, no obvious wires, but when she looked at the angle again, she understood. The mirror was positioned so that anyone standing in this room couldn't be filmed from certain angles in the ceiling. It created a blind spot from the surveillance cameras hidden in the crown molding. Seyon knew exactly where the cameras were, and she'd arranged her private space to avoid them. That meant 2 things. First, she had counter-surveillance training, probably extensive, the kind you got from government agencies, not from growing up in the criminal underworld. Second, she knew Min-jun was watching her, and she was staying anyway. Why? Amara finished making the bed, her mind working through possibilities. If you were an undercover agent and you knew you were being surveilled, you'd either blow your cover and get out, or B, use that knowledge to your advantage. Seyon was doing option B. She'd created blind spots where she could have private phone calls, private moments without Min-jun knowing. But she was staying close, staying in character, continuing to play the role of his fiancée. The case had to be massive, worth the risk, worth putting yourself in danger every single day for months or years. Amara thought about her cousin Marcus, thought about how one kid getting mixed up with the wrong people had led to his disappearance. How many other people had Min Jun's organization destroyed? How many bodies would Se-yeon need to justify staying in this house? That night, Amara added to her notebook, Se-yeon knows about cameras, has created blind spots, counter-surveillance training confirmed, professional, not amateur, staying despite knowledge of surveillance, high-value target, major operation. She stared at the words for a long time, then added one more line. Question: what is Min Jun getting out of this arrangement that makes protecting her worth alienating his own men? The answer came 3 days later. Amara was changing the sheets in Se-yeon's bedroom when she noticed it. The full-length mirror in the corner, an ornate piece with a gilded frame that probably cost more than Amara would earn in 5 years, was positioned strangely, not against the wall like normal mirrors, but angled away from the bed, away from the closet, away from the bathroom door, away from anywhere Se-yeon would naturally need to see herself. Amara paused in her sheep changing, looking at her own reflection in the glass. Then she walked closer, examining the frame. No cameras visible, no obvious wires, but when she looked at the angle again, she understood. The mirror was positioned so that anyone standing in this room couldn't be filmed from certain angles in the ceiling. It created a blind spot from the surveillance cameras hidden in the crown molding. Se-yeon knew exactly where the cameras were, and she'd arranged her private space to avoid them. That meant 2 things. First, she had counter-surveillance training, probably extensive, the kind you got from government agencies, not from growing up in the criminal underworld. Second, she knew Min Jun was watching her, and she was staying anyway. Why? Amara finished making the bed, her mind working through possibilities. If you were an undercover agent and you knew you were being surveilled, you'd either blow your cover and get out, or B, use that knowledge to your advantage. Se-yeon was doing option B. She'd created blind spots where she could have private phone calls, private moments without Min Jun knowing. But she was staying close, staying in character, continuing to play the role of his fiancée. The case had to be massive, worth the risk, worth putting yourself in danger every single day for months or years. Amara thought about her cousin Marcus, thought about how one kid getting mixed up with the wrong people had led to his disappearance. How many other people had Min Jun's organization destroyed? How many bodies would Se-yeon need to justify staying in this house? That night, Amara added to her notebook, Se-yeon knows about cameras, has created blind spots, counter-surveillance training confirmed, professional, not amateur, staying despite knowledge of surveillance, high-value target, major operation. She stared at the words for a long time, then added one more line. Question: what is Min Jun getting out of this arrangement that makes protecting her worth alienating his own men? The answer came when Amara was cleaning Min Jun's office on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd been in this room hundreds of times, had dusted every surface, emptied every trash can, straightened every paper on his desk, but she'd never found anything particularly revealing. Min Jun was too careful to leave evidence lying around. But on this Tuesday, there was a file folder on his desk, thick, manila, slightly worn at the edges like it had been handled many times. It was sitting next to his coffee cup, which meant he had been reviewing it recently. The label on the folder read, Yakuza Operations West Coast. Amara's hands continued dusting the desk while her eyes scanned the room. The door was closed. The camera in the bookcase had a blind spot. She'd mapped it weeks ago, where someone standing at the desk couldn't be seen clearly. She positioned herself in that blind spot, opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, documents, financial records, everything you'd need to understand the Yakuza's operations on the entire West Coast, distribution networks, key players, weak points in their organization. This was intelligence, detailed, comprehensive, recent intelligence, the kind of intelligence that would take years to gather, the kind that could start a war between criminal organizations, or end one. And in the bottom right corner of one of the documents, Amara saw a small notation in handwriting she recognized as Seiyon's. Verified 315. Contact maintains access. Seiyon wasn't just investigating Min Yun, she was feeding him intelligence on his rivals, making herself valuable, making herself indispensable. That's why he protected her. That's why he defended her against his own men's suspicions. She was giving him the keys to the kingdom, information that would let him outmaneuver, outthink, and eventually destroy his competition. But why would a federal agent help a criminal organization destroy its rivals? The answer came to Amara slowly, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Unless the goal isn't to arrest Min Yun, the goal is to let him eliminate all the competition first, then arrest everyone at once. It was brilliant in a ruthless kind of way. Instead of taking down one organization and watching 3 more spring up to fill the void, you'd let them destroy each other, feed intelligence to one side, watch them wage war, then sweep in and arrest the survivors. Seiyon wasn't building a case against just Min Yun. She was building a case against the entire criminal infrastructure of the West Coast, and Min Yun had no idea he was being used as a weapon against his own world. Amara closed the folder carefully, exactly as she'd found it, positioned the coffee cup at the same angle, continued dusting as if she'd seen nothing, but her mind was reeling. This was bigger than Marcus, bigger than anything she'd imagined when she took this job, and she was standing in the middle of it. The tension in the mansion had been building for days. Amara could feel it in the way the guards moved, faster, more alert, hands resting on weapons instead of hanging loose, in the way Min Yun snapped at his staff over tiny infractions, coffee 2 degrees too cold, a shirt with a microscopic wrinkle. In the way Seiyon had stopped sleeping, Amara knew because she'd walked past Seiyon's room at 3 a.m. on 3 consecutive nights to get cleaning supplies from the storage closet, and each time the light had been on under the door. The sound of quiet pacing. Once she'd heard what sounded like someone crying, but so softly it might have been her imagination. Something was coming. It arrived on a Wednesday at 1:47 p.m. Amara was serving lunch to Min Yun in his study, a simple meal of rice, grilled fish, and vegetables that he barely touched, when the door burst open. No knock, no warning, just Kim Tae-sung, his second-in-command, storming in with his face flushed red and a phone clutched in his hand. "We have a problem," he said in Korean. Amara understood every word but kept her face carefully neutral, standing by the doorway with the lunch tray still in her hands. "What problem?" Min Yun's voice was ice, but Amara could see the tension in his shoulders. The shipment was intercepted. Federal agents, Port of Oakland, they knew the exact route, the exact time, the exact container number. Everything. Min Yun stood slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. How? Someone talked. Someone from inside. Tae-sung's voice was shaking with barely controlled rage. "This is the 3rd shipment in 4 months. 3. That's not coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's someone feeding information directly to the feds. Who knew about this shipment? Your inner circle. Me, Jin-ho, Chen, Park in the kitchen, and..." His eyes flickered to where Amara stood, then moved past her toward the direction of Seiyon's room. And her. Min Yun's hand moved to the gun at his hip. Amara had never seen him draw it before, but his fingers wrapped around the grip with practiced ease. "Get out," he told Tae-sung. "Boss, you need to hear this. I had someone run the numbers. Every shipment we've lost, every operation that's gone sideways, every time the feds have been in exactly the right place at the right time, it all started after she arrived, 2 years ago. The timeline matches perfectly. I said, get out." "She's a federal agent," Tae-sung was almost shouting now. "She has to be. Nobody else explains the pattern. And if you can't see that, if you're too..." Min Yun moved faster than Amara would have thought was possible for a man his size. One moment he was behind his desk. The next he had Tae-sung pressed against the wall, forearm across his throat, gun pressed under his chin. "Finish that sentence," Min Jun said quietly. "I want to hear how it ends." Tae-sung's eyes were wide, his hands raised in surrender. "I'm just trying to protect you. Protect all of us. By questioning my judgment, by accusing my fiancé, by pointing out what everyone else is too scared to say. They stayed frozen like that for a long moment. Amara could see the calculation in Minjun's eyes, weighing loyalty against logic, emotion against evidence. Finally, he stepped back, lowered the gun. "You're right," he said, and Amara's breath caught. "The pattern is suspicious. The timing is suspicious. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk to Se-Yun. I'm going to get answers. And if," he paused, "if there's a problem, I'll handle it personally." Taesung nodded, rubbing his throat where Minjun's arm had pressed. "But until I have proof," Minjun continued, "until I know for certain, you don't touch her. You don't threaten her. You don't even look at her wrong. Are we clear?" "Crystal. Good. Now get out and tell Jinho to tighten security. I want everyone in this house accounted for at all times, staff included." His eyes flicked to Amara for the first time since the confrontation started. "Everyone." Taesung left, the door closed with a soft click. Minjun stood there for a long moment, his back to Amara, his hand still on his weapon. She could see his shoulders rising and falling with each breath, could see him fighting for control. Then he spoke without turning around. "Leave the food. Go." Amara set the tray down with steady hands, walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. "Sir," she said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken to him directly in weeks. "The fish is getting cold." She didn't know why she said it. Maybe because she needed to remind him she was human. Maybe because she needed to remind herself. Maybe because in that moment she saw something in the set of his shoulders that looked almost like grief. Minjun didn't respond, didn't turn around. Amara left, but she didn't go far. That night, the mansion erupted. Amara was in the kitchen, preparing the evening meal with Park's supervision. He was teaching her his mother's recipe for galbi jim, explaining the proper way to score the meat, the exact proportions of soy sauce and sugar and sesame oil. It was the most he'd spoken to her in 3 months, and she realized with sudden clarity that he was nervous, talking to fill the silence, to distract himself from whatever was coming. They both heard it at the same time, shouting from the dining room. Minjun's voice, loud and angry in a way she'd never heard before, and then Se-Yun's voice, cold and cutting, every word sharp as broken glass. Park's hand stilled on the meat he was preparing. "Go," he said quietly. "Serve dinner. Act normal." Amara picked up the tray of banchan, small side dishes already prepared, and walked toward the dining room. Her steps were measured, unhurried, even though her heart was hammering. The shouting got louder as she approached. "I don't know what you're talking about," Se-Yun's voice. "Don't lie to me. 3 months of work gone. $50 million gone. 18 of my men arrested, and you're the only person who knew every detail of that operation. I'm not the only person. Your entire command structure knew. Your lieutenants knew. Your drivers knew. Your accountants knew. But yes, blame the woman you never trusted anyway." A crash, something breaking. Amara reached the doorway just as a plate shattered against the wall 6 inches from Se-Yun's head. But Se-Yun hadn't moved from her chair, hadn't flinched. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, her expression carved from ice. "Give me one reason not to kill you right now," Minjun said. He was standing over her, his fist clenched, shards of broken porcelain at his feet. His face was flushed, a vein visible in his temple. "Because you need me." Se-Yun's voice was perfectly calm. "The Yakuza won't deal with you without my connections. The Triads respect me more than they respect you. You kill me, you lose access to every intelligence source I've cultivated over 2 years. You lose the advantage I've given you over every rival in 3 states. Then maybe I lose everything. Maybe I'd rather lose everything than keep a snake in my own house. Then you're more of a fool than your father thought." The words hung in the air like poison. Minjun's hand shot out, grabbing Se-Yun to the throat. She still didn't react, didn't fight, just looked at him with those cold eyes. "My father?" His voice was barely a whisper. "What do you know about my father?" "I know he warned you about me. Called you 2 weeks ago and told you to be careful. Told you I was too good to be true." Se-Yun's voice was strained but steady. "I know you ignored him. I know you chose me over his advice, and I know that's eating you alive right now." Minjun's grip tightened. Amara could see Se-Yun's face starting to turn red. "Dinner is ready. Amara said. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Both of them turned to look at her. Amara stood in the doorway, the tray of banchan balanced perfectly in her hands, her face neutral, her presence suddenly impossible to ignore. The moment stretched. Minjun's hand loosened slightly on Seon's throat. "Set the table," he said finally, his voice hoarse. Amara moved into the room with the same calm efficiency she'd displayed every night for 14 weeks. She stepped around the broken porcelain, set down small dishes of kimchi, pickled radish, seasoned spinach, poured water into crystal glasses, arranged silverware with mechanical precision. The whole time she could feel both of them watching her. Minjun had released Seon and stepped back, but his hand remained near his gun. Seon was rubbing her throat, her eyes tracking Amara's every movement. When she was finished, Amara stepped back into her usual position by the wall, hands folded, eyes down, invisible again. But her mind was racing. Seon just confirmed she's been feeding him intelligence, confirmed his father suspects her, confirmed she's been playing both sides, and she did it in front of me. That was deliberate. Had to be. Seon was too careful to make that kind of mistake. She wanted Amara to know. But why? The meal passed in poisonous silence. Neither of them ate. Seon drank 3 glasses of wine, each one faster than the last. Minjun kept checking his phone, his jaw working like he was grinding his teeth to powder. Finally, he stood. "We'll finish this conversation later," he told Seon. His voice was back under control, cold and professional. "And you'll tell me everything. Every contact, every source, every lie you've told me. Everything. Or what? Or I let Tae-sung have his way. And believe me, he has very creative ideas about how to get information from people who don't want to share." He walked out without another word. Seon remained seated, staring at her untouched plate. Amara began clearing the dishes, moving around the table with practiced efficiency. The broken porcelain crunched under her shoes. She was reaching for Seon's wine glass when the woman spoke. "You heard everything." It wasn't a question. Amara's hand paused for half a second, imperceptible to most people, but Seon noticed. The Ice Queen noticed everything. "I heard raised voices. Not my business." "No, it's not." Seon looked up at her for the first time, really looked at her like she was seeing Amara as a person instead of a piece of furniture. "You've been working here how long? 14 weeks? 14 weeks. And I've never heard you speak more than 3 words at a time." Seon tilted her head, studying Amara's face. "You're smart. Staying quiet, staying small, staying invisible." Amara said nothing, continued clearing plates, her movements smooth and practiced. "But you know what I've noticed about you?" Seon continued. Her voice was different now, less cold, more curious, almost conversational. "You're never scared. Everyone else in this house walks around like they're about to be shot. Kim flinches at shadows. Ji-woo cries in the supply closet. Even Park, who's been here for years, keeps his head down and his mouth shut. But not you. You just exist, like none of this touches you." Amara met her eyes. "Should I be scared?" "Yes. Everyone should be scared in this house. I'm scared, and I'm the one they call the Ice Queen. Then maybe I'm just better at hiding it." A ghost of smile crossed Seon's face, the first genuine expression Amara had ever seen from her. "Maybe. Or maybe you're hiding something else entirely." She stood, smoothing her dress with hands that trembled slightly. Up close, Amara could see the red marks on her throat where Minjun had grabbed her, could see the exhaustion around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "Tell me something," Seon said quietly. "If you saw someone in danger, would you help them, or would you stay invisible?" It was a test, or a plea, maybe both. "Depends on the danger," Amara said carefully, "and whether helping would just get us both killed." "Smart answer." Seon picked up her purse from the sideboard. "I'm going to my room. Don't disturb me tonight. Don't let anyone disturb me." "Can you do that?" "I'm just the maid." "Right, just the maid." Seon walked toward the door, then paused. Without turning around, she said, "The service entrance. There's a camera blind spot. 6 minutes. Every night at 11:17. You didn't hear that from me, she laughed. Amara stood alone in the dining room with the dirty dishes and the weight of what had just happened. Seyon had just told her how to escape, or how to help someone else escape. That night, Amara opened her notebook and wrote, Week 14, Wednesday. Minjun suspects Seyon of being informant. Confrontation. 3 shipments lost, 18 men arrested, $50 million gone. Federal involvement confirmed. Pattern too obvious. She's running out of time. Seyon told me about service entrance blind spot. Deliberate. She knows I'm not just a maid. Question. What does she want from me? And then, after a long pause, decision point approaching. Marcus is still missing. No leads. No answers. But this is bigger than Marcus now. This is bigger than revenge. If Seyon dies, Minjun's organization continues. If she succeeds, maybe it all comes down. Maybe I finally get answers about what happened to my cousin. Choose, observe, or act. She stared at those words for a long time, thought about her mother, exhausted and broken, thought about Marcus, probably dead in an unmarked grave somewhere, thought about all the other people like her, people trying to survive, who'd been chewed up and spit out by organizations like this, thought about Seyon, who was probably lying in bed right now in her carefully arranged blind spot, knowing that tomorrow might be the day she died. Amara made her decision. She was better than this. Amara made her move on a Friday morning. She'd spent the entire night weighing her options, running through scenarios, calculating risks. By dawn, she knew what she had to do. It was dangerous. It could get her killed, but staying silent was becoming just as dangerous. And more than that, staying silent meant being complicit, meant watching another person disappear and doing nothing. She was done doing nothing. She waited until 10:05 a.m., when Seyon always left for her mysterious appointments and Minjun was locked in meetings with his lieutenants. Then she went to Seyon's room. The door was unlocked. Careless or deliberate? Amara slipped inside, closing the door softly behind her. She'd cleaned this room 100 times, but never like this. Never with purpose beyond making a bed or dusting a surface. Now she moved with clinical precision, checking every corner, every hiding place. She went straight to the bed, to the spot where she'd found the wire weeks ago. It was still there, still transmitting, the tiny device tucked into the bed frame. She didn't touch it, didn't need to. Instead, she pulled out her phone and took 3 quick photos: the wire, the transmitter, the serial numbers visible on the device. Then she went to the closet. Seyon's clothes hung in color-coordinated rows, blacks and grays and dark blues, the uniform of someone who never wanted to stand out. Amara pushed through them methodically, checking pockets, checking linings, feeling for anything hidden. In the jacket Seyon had worn on Wednesday, a tailored Armani blazer in charcoal gray, she found it. A business card, plain white cardstock, no name, no logo, no company, just a phone number and 3 letters printed in simple black font, FBI. Amara's breath caught. FBI. Not an informant, not a mole, an agent. Everything clicked into place with sudden crystalline clarity. The weird hours, the unexplained absences, the bruises, the phone calls about operations and deadlines and the director, the counter-surveillance awareness, the wire hidden in her own bedroom, not to record herself, but to record everyone else, the intelligence she'd been feeding Minjun about his rivals. Seyon was federal law enforcement, deep undercover, playing the role of the Ice Queen, the Mafia boss's fiancée, while building a massive case against organized crime from the inside. And she was about to be killed for it. Amara took a photo of the card, careful to capture the number clearly. Then she put everything back exactly as she'd found it. Jacket hung at the same angle, business card in the same pocket, same orientation, nothing disturbed. She was about to leave when she saw it. A laptop, hidden under a stack of sweaters on the top shelf of the closet. Consumer grade, nothing fancy, the kind of computer 1 million people owned, but it was hidden, and people didn't hide things unless they were important. Amara pulled it down, opened it.
password protected, as expected. She took a photo of the laptop, brand, model, serial number visible, then put it back.
As she was closing the closet, her eye caught on something else, a small safe built into the wall behind the hanging clothes. Professional installation, probably done before Selyan moved in. The door was closed, but Amara could see scratches around the keypad. Someone had been opening and closing it frequently. She couldn't open it, didn't have the code, but she photographed it anyway. When she left the room 10 minutes after entering, everything was exactly as she'd found it. No evidence of her presence, no disturbance. In her own room, she sat on her narrow bed and stared at the photos on her phone. "This is not your problem," she told herself. "You're just the maid. Keep your head down, stay invisible, survive." But another voice, quieter, stronger, whispered back, "You're better than this. Marcus would want you to be better than this." She looked at the photo of the FBI card, at the phone number printed there. One call, that's all it would take. One anonymous call to that number, warning them that their agent was compromised, that her cover was blown, that she had days, maybe hours, before Minjun made his move. But what if the FBI already knew? What if pulling her out would ruin months or years of work? What if saving Selyan meant letting Minjun's organization continue? Or worse, what if the FBI didn't care? What if Selyan was expendable to them? Just another asset they were willing to sacrifice for the larger operation. Amara thought about all the information she'd collected over the past 15 weeks, all the observations in her notebook, the patterns, the schedules, the vulnerabilities. She had something the FBI didn't have, real-time intelligence from inside the mansion. She knew things Selyan couldn't possibly know because she was too visible, too watched. Amara knew about the camera blind spots, knew about the guard rotations, knew about Minjun's patterns, his meetings, his weaknesses, knew about the Yakuza intelligence file, about the internal suspicions, about the timeline. She could give Selyan something more valuable than a warning. She could give her a way out. The final pieces fell into place on a Tuesday. Amara was dusting the hallway outside Minjun's office, a task that put her within earshot of his phone conversations, when she heard him talking to someone. His door was cracked open just enough for sound to escape, and his voice had the particular tone it got when he was making arrangements he didn't want interrupted. "Friday night, after dinner, Chen will drive her to the usual spot. Make it look like an accident. Car off the road, maybe. Fire would be better. Destroys evidence." A pause while whoever was on the other end responded. "I don't care how. Just make sure she doesn't suffer. She was..." His voice caught slightly. "She mattered to me once. Maybe still does. But this is business. She betrayed us. She has to go." Another pause. Longer this time. No second chances, no warnings, no opportunities to run. She's too smart, too well trained. If she gets even a hint that we're coming, she'll disappear, and we'll never find her. So it has to be clean. It has to be final. He hung up. Amara's hands kept moving over the antique table she was dusting, but her mind was locked on those words. Friday night, after dinner, Chen will drive her to the usual spot. 4 days. Selyan had 4 days to live. That night, Amara pulled out her notebook and read through every entry she'd made over the past 16 weeks. All the observations, all the patterns, all the pieces of the puzzle she'd been assembling without fully realizing what the complete picture would show. Week 1, guard rotation, camera blind spots, Minjun's schedule. Week 4, recording device in Selyan's room, FBI card in jacket pocket. Week 8, Yakuza intelligence file, Selyan feeding information to Minjun. Week 11, counter-surveillance awareness, blind spots deliberately created. Week 14, cover blown, timeline collapsed, 4 days to execution. She had all the pieces. Now she just needed to put them together in the right order. Amara opened to a fresh page and began to write. Not observations this time. A plan. The mansion felt different tonight. Heavier. Like the air itself knew what was coming. Like the walls were holding their breath.
Amara prepared dinner with the same mechanical precision she always used, but inside she was running through the plan one more time, checking every detail, looking for flaws. Roasted duck, Min-jun's favorite, seasonal vegetables prepared exactly the way he liked them, a wine from his private collection, a 2005 Chateau Margaux that cost $4,000 a bottle. She'd requested it specifically, told Park it was for a special occasion. He hadn't asked what occasion. He'd just nodded and retrieved it from the wine cellar.
She could feel the eyes on her as she worked, the guards watching more carefully than usual, the other staff members keeping their distance, like they could sense something was about to happen and wanted to be nowhere near the blast radius. Even Park was quieter than normal. He helped her plate the dishes without his usual running commentary, his movements mechanical. "You should take tomorrow off," he said quietly as she was carrying the first course toward the dining room. "Call in sick. Stay home." "Why?" Amara kept her voice neutral. "Just trust me. Tomorrow is not a good day to be in this house." So he knew. Of course he knew. In a house like this, everyone knew when death was coming. They just pretended not to see it. At 7:45 p.m., she carried the first course into the dining room. Min-jun sat at the head of the table, checking his phone. He was dressed more formally than usual, a suit instead of his usual business casual, his hair freshly cut, his shoes polished, like he was going to a funeral. In a way, he was. Se-yeon sat beside him, her face as cold and composed as ever, but Amara could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand rested near her purse, near whatever weapon she kept hidden there. She was wearing all black tonight, a simple dress, elegant and expensive, funeral clothes. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "Wine," Min-jun said without looking up. Amara poured. Her hands were steady. The expensive Margaux splashed into the crystal glasses, dark as blood. The meal progressed in tense silence. Amara served each course with practiced efficiency. The duck perfectly roasted, the vegetables, the side dishes, standing in her usual spot by the wall between deliveries. Watching, waiting. Neither of them ate much. Min-jun pushed food around his plate, taking small bites out of obligation. Se-yeon drank wine, 1 glass, 2, 3, but left her food untouched. At 8:47 p.m., as Amara was preparing to serve dessert, Min-jun's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, finality, the look of a man who just confirmed that all the pieces were in place. He stood. "I need to take this call," he said to Se-yeon. "Don't go anywhere. Chen will take you home after dessert." It wasn't a request. It was a death sentence disguised as courtesy. "Home?" Se-yeon's voice was perfectly controlled. "I live here. Your apartment, the one downtown. You left some things there, remember? Chen will take you to collect them." Their eyes met across the table. Amara could see the understanding pass between them. He knew that she knew. She knew that he knew. All pretense was gone. "Of course," Se-yeon said quietly. "Thank you for thinking of it." Min-jun left the room. Se-yeon sat perfectly still, staring at her empty wine glass. Amara could see her mind working, calculating odds, planning escape routes. There weren't any good ones. The mansion was locked down tight tonight. Amara had watched the security preparations all afternoon. Extra guards at every exit, windows bolted. Even the service entrance had 3 men stationed outside instead of the usual one. They weren't taking chances. Chen was waiting in the garage with the car running. 2 more men would be in the follow vehicle. They'd drive Se-yeon to some remote location, probably the industrial district by the docks, where gunshots wouldn't attract attention, and make it look like an accident. She had maybe an hour to live. Amara picked up the dessert tray, a simple arrangement of fresh fruit and expensive chocolates, and turned toward the kitchen. Then she paused. This was the moment, the decision point she'd been circling for weeks. She turned back, set the tray down on the table, looked Se-yeon directly in the eye, and said clearly and calmly, "I'm better than this." The room went silent. Not just quiet, silent in a way that felt like the world had stopped breathing, like time itself had paused to listen. Seon's eyes widened fractionally. It was the first time Amara had ever seen genuine surprise on the Ice Queen's face. The mask slipped just for a second, and underneath it Amara saw something she hadn't expected. Hope. "What did you just say?" Seon's voice was barely a whisper. Amara didn't repeat herself. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her uniform and pulled out a small flash drive, standard USB, the cheap kind you could buy at any office supply store. Nothing special about it except what was stored on it. She set it on the table between them. "Everything you need is on here," Amara said. Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the dinner menu. Photos of the wire in your bedroom, both your FBI device and the second one monitoring you, dates and times of every shipment for the last 4 months, names of every person Min Jun has met with, bank account numbers, locations of safe houses, the Yakuza intelligence file he's been using to take down his rivals, security schedules, guard rotations, camera blind spots. Si-yeon stared at the flash drive like it was a bomb. Or a miracle. "How did you—" "I clean this house. I'm in every room. I hear every conversation. I see everything." Amara's voice was calm, but her heart was hammering. This was it, the point of no return. Nobody notices the maid. "Why?" Si-yeon's hand moved toward the flash drive but stopped short of touching it, like she was afraid it might disappear. "Why would you risk this if Min Jun finds out?" "Because you're going to die tonight if you don't have leverage, and I'm tired of watching people die in this house." Amara glanced toward the door, listening for footsteps. They had maybe 2 more minutes before Min Jun came back. "My cousin disappeared 18 months ago. Marcus Johnson, 23 years old. He was working for Min Jun's organization, didn't know what he was getting into until it was too late. I came here to find out what happened to him." "Did you?" "No, but I found something bigger. I found you. I found evidence of a federal operation that could take down every organized crime syndicate on the West Coast, and I realized that's worth more than my revenge." Footsteps in the hallway. Min Jun returning. Amara picked up her tray. The service entrance, back left corner. There's a gap in the security coverage between 11:17 and 11:23 p.m. tonight. 6 minutes. The guard switches positions and the cameras reset their recording cycle. You'll have to move fast. There's a rental car parked 2 blocks north, silver Honda, keys under the driver's side wheel well, untraceable to me or you. Si-yeon's hand closed around the flash drive. "Come with me." "No." Amara's voice was firm. "I stay. If I disappear the same night you do, they'll know someone helped you. I'm more useful here, cleaning up your trail. They'll kill you. Only if they figure it out, and I've been invisible for 16 weeks. I can stay invisible a little longer." Amara moved toward the door as Min Jun's shadow appeared in the hallway. 11:17, don't be late. She passed Min Jun in the doorway, eyes down, tray balanced perfectly. Just the maid, just the furniture. Behind her, she heard him say, "Ready to go?" and Si-yeon's voice cold as ever, "Of course." Amara was mopping the second-floor hallway, the perfect excuse to be near the service entrance, when she saw Si-yeon slip out of her room. No bags, no coat, just the black dress and the flash drive hidden somewhere on her person. Their eyes met for one brief second. Si-yeon gave the smallest nod. Then she was gone, moving through the blind spot Amara had mapped weeks ago, down the service stairs, out the back entrance during the precise 6-minute window when nobody was watching. Amara continued mopping, counting the seconds in her head. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. At 4 minutes, she heard shouting from downstairs. Chen's voice panicked. "She's gone! The Ice Queen is gone!" Chaos erupted. Guards running, phones ringing, Min Jun's voice roaring orders. Amara kept mopping, her face carefully neutral, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. They came for her in the early morning hours. Not Min Jun. He was too smart to dirty his own hands. Tae-sung and 2 guards pulling her out of bed, dragging her to the basement interrogation room she'd always known existed, but had never seen. They questioned her for 3 hours.
Where was Si-Yan? Had she seen anything, heard anything? Who had helped her escape? Amara played her role perfectly. Confused, scared, just the maid who cleaned and served and saw nothing, heard nothing, knew nothing. "I was mopping the second floor," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound genuine. "I didn't see Miss Lee leave. I didn't even know she was gone until I heard the shouting." Tae-sung didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But belief wasn't the same as proof, and Amara had been careful, so careful. The security footage showed nothing because she'd moved Si-Yan through the exact blind spots she'd documented. The guard rotations checked out. Amara had been exactly where she said she was at exactly the right times. There was no evidence, no connection. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, they let her go. "If I find out you had anything to do with this," Tae-sung said quietly as she was leaving, "I'll kill you myself. I understand, but I didn't, I swear." The FBI raid came at dawn. 40 agents, tactical teams, helicopters. They hit the mansion and 6 other locations simultaneously, arresting Min Jun, his entire command structure, and 73 members of his organization. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from inside the mansion, the same footage Min Jun had been using to monitor his own people, now turned against him. Financial records, communication logs, testimony from a confidential informant who'd spent 2 years embedded in the organization. The news called it the largest organized crime takedown in West Coast history. Amara watched the coverage from her tiny apartment in a different part of the city. She'd quit her job at the mansion 2 weeks earlier, citing family emergency, and disappeared into the background like she'd never existed. On her coffee table sat a package that had arrived that morning. No return address. Inside, a burner phone with one message saved. Marcus Johnson, case file 2847JK. Your cousin witnessed a murder. 3 men executed at the docks by Min Jun's organization. They tried to silence him. FBI witness protection. He's alive, living in Oregon under a new name. He thinks about you every day. Thank you for giving me a chance to finish this. S. Amara read the message 3 times. Then she deleted it, destroyed the phone, and sat in her small apartment as the morning sun came through the windows. Marcus was alive. The organization that had taken him was destroyed, and she had been the invisible hand that made it all possible. Amara stood in a small coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, watching a young man laugh at something his companion said. He looked different. Different haircut, different clothes, different name on the order the barista called out, but she'd know her cousin anywhere. Marcus looked up, and their eyes met across the coffee shop. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by disbelief, then tears. They didn't speak, couldn't speak. His new life depended on his old one staying dead. But Marcus stood, walked over, and pulled her into a hug that lasted forever, and not long enough. "I thought I'd never see you again," he whispered. "I'm better than that," Amara whispered back. When they separated, Marcus pressed something in her hand, a business card, FBI Victim Services, a phone number, a name, Special Agent Lee Se-Yan. "She said you'd come eventually," Marcus said quietly. "Said you deserved answers and options." "Options? The Bureau is recruiting. They need people like you, people who can be invisible, people who can see what others miss." He smiled, sad and proud at the same time. "She said you're the best observer she's ever seen. Said you'd make a hell of an agent if you wanted to be." Amara looked at the card.